At a secret base in the Guatemalan jungle, American CIA agents had been training Cuban exiles to invade Cuba. This, they thought, would be the impetus for the Cuban people to rise up and overthrow Castro. The plan was presented to the new president, John F. Kennedy. The CIA badly misled the new president, promising him an easy victory and an end to the Cuban problem. Kennedy agreed to the invasion, but demanded crucial changes to hide America's involvement. Just 3 days before the planned invasion, Kennedy denied any possibility of American intervention.
There will not be, under any conditions, be an intervention in Cuba by United States Armed Forces. And this government will do everything it possibly can, and I think it can meet its responsibilities to make sure that there are no Americans involved in any actions inside Cuba.
As Kennedy spoke, the invasion force was gathering. An advance wave of American bombers planned to destroy Castro's air force on the ground. The president, worried that this might reveal Washington's role, ordered the operation scaled down. On April the 15th, 1961, just 6 American bombers, disguised in the colors of the Cuban Air Force, took off from Nicaragua for a crucial attack on Cuban airfields. But with so few bombers, only 3 Cuban planes were destroyed. 7 civilians were killed. The following day, just 1,500 exiles, equipped with American arms and ammunition, arrived at the Bay of Pigs, 125 miles to the south of Havana.
Through Mr. Gale Allen, I learned that Mr. George Bush, DCI designate, has prior knowledge of the now terminated project Wabrini LP Dictium, which was involved in proprietary commercial operations in Europe. He became aware of this project through Mr. Thomas J. Devine, a former CIA staff employee and later oil wildcatting associate with Mr. Bush. Their joint ventures culminated in an establishment of ZAPATA Oil in 1953, which they eventually sold. After the sale of the ZAPATA Oil, Mr. Bush went into politics, and Mr. Devine became a member of the investment firm of Train, Cabot, and Associates in New York. The attached memorandum describes a close relationship between Messrs. Devine and Bush in 1967-68. First of all, that's a damn lie, because there was no mention about ZAPATA Oil being sold until after 9/11. According to Mr. Allen, continued while Mr. Bush was our ambassador to the United Nations. So Bush was busy in the 60s. CIA, running for Congress, running frickin' operations out of ZAPATA Oil. Yeah, he was one of the people, ladies and gentlemen, that would benefit in Vietnam. That's a whole nother discussion, and we'll get to that later. Right now, we're focusing on this ZAPATA Oil, its origins, and what they decided to finally start doing after ZAPATA Oil finally got off the ground. Well, look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Mystery of Bush's secret CIA past. Officially, Bush has denied that he had any contact with the CIA until 1976. Oh, I'm tired of this old bastard lying, okay? And we're going to do a tie-in here. Proudly, who coordinates, and you'll see this file again, by the way, folks, just to give you a heads up. Proudly, who coordinated supplies for the 1961 fiasco, tells page 6 that the invasion was codenamed ZAPATA. ZAPATA. The same ZAPATA that was named after an oil company, and that the 2 boats used by invaders were named Barbara and Houston. It happens that at the time of the invasion, Bush ran an offshore oil company called ZAPATA Oil, bought by CIA money, aka tax dollars, ladies and gentlemen. The company, which did much of its business in the Caribbean, was based in Houston. The office was based in Houston. The actual oil rig was outside of Cuba, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep that in mind. Where Bush lived with his wife, Barbara. Prouty says at the time I had no idea why they picked those names. Then later I realized Zapata, Barbara, Houston, a triple coincidence is pretty rare. Only who is in 1975 charged that Richard Nixon aide Alexander Butterfield served as a CIA contact in the White House. At the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Bay of Pigs program was approved in March of 1960 under Dwight Eisenhower. That's crazy mess. I didn't know that. Chances are it might have been pulled together by bright young Republicans. I can't prove it. It wouldn't surprise me that Bush was another one of the fellows recruited by the CIA out of Yale. I'm going to tell you right now, mainstream media and other publications don't want you to know that he was part of the CIA. In a future video, I'm going to bring to your attention a piece of information that connects Bush with a certain incident that occurred in Dallas, Texas. I don't think I have to tell you any more than that. This is out of the Bush 41 Presidential Library. In 1953, Bush and Overbay formed a new business with Hugh and Bill Letke named ZAPATA Petroleum Corporation. Hugh Letke became president and George Bush became vice president of the new business venture. The following year, the parent company formed Zapata Offshore Company, in which Bush eventually was named president. In 1959, the company was split, leaving the Letkes to control Zapata Petroleum Corporation and establishing Bush as head of Zapata Offshore. That same year, Bush moved his family and headquarters of Zapata Offshore Oil to Houston. Then he continued to involve himself with community and civic activity. There he continued to involve himself with community and civic activity, serving on committees on the Houston Chamber of Commerce and Mental Health Association of Houston and Harris County. He was ahead of that? Oh, hell no. In 1963, Bush was elected chairman of Harris County Republican Party. A failed bid for the U.S. Senate followed in 1964. In 1966, Bush decided to sell his interest in Zapata Offshore Oil Company and concentrate on a winning seat in U.S. Congress. That's Code 41, pretend that he sold it off. Actually, he didn't sell it off. He used that as a money tree. I need to do a video involving the word as a sword, because he mentions about a 5-star trust. I'm wondering if this 5-star trust is the same as this money tree that I'm referring to, and I think Zapata Offshore Oil was part of that. It also talks about some files involving, you keep digging, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll find your answer. I'm telling you now. Sometimes you gotta look at Wikipedia, because sometimes as much as you don't think, they post some damn truth. They post some truth. Let me bring this to your attention. Zapata filing records with the U.S. Security Exchange Commission are intact from the years 1955 and 1959, and then again from 1967 onwards. However, records for the years 1960 and 66 missing. How the hell are they missing? I'll give you a short answer. He didn't want people knowing that he committed to some operations. I'll bet you 10 to 1 Zapata had something to do with some monetary operations involving Vietnam. I'm leaving that alone for now. But there's another important detail you need to understand. During the Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis, Zapata allowed its oil rigs to be used as listening posts. Now, the only way they would make them listening posts is if the CIA got involved and used them as hearing devices to try to get information from these clowns. Now, I ain't gonna lie, people. This is some shady garbage. And for Bush to tell people while he was alive that in 1988, check this out, Barron's Magazine. In 1988, Barron's Magazine in an article said Zapata was a part-time purchasing front for the CIA. That's partially correct. I have a feeling they were a full-blown front altogether, getting operations and actually doing business as far as with Vietnam and other operations they were committed to, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to lie to you here, people. This is some shady garbage.
Members of the American Society, newspaper editors, ladies and gentlemen. The president of a great democracy such as ours and the editors of great newspapers such as yours owe a common obligation to the people. An obligation to present the facts, to present them with candor, and to present them in perspective. It is with that obligation in mind that I have decided in the last 24 hours to discuss briefly at this time the recent events in Cuba. On that unhappy island, as in so many other arenas of the contest for freedom, the news has grown worse instead of better. I have emphasized before that this was a struggle of Cuban patriots against a Cuban dictator. While we could not be expected to hide our sympathies we made it repeatedly clear that the armed forces of this country would not intervene in any way. Any unilateral American intervention in the absence of an external attack upon ourselves or an ally would have been contrary to our traditions and to our international obligations. But let the record show that our restraint is not inexhaustible. Should it ever appear that the inter-American doctrine of non-interference merely conceals or excuses a policy of non-action, if the nations of this hemisphere should fail to meet their commitments against outside communist penetration, then I want it clearly understood that this government will not hesitate in meeting its primary obligations, which are to the security of our nation. Nor would we expect or accept the same outcome which this small band of gallant Cuban refugees must have known that they were chancing, determined as they were against heavy odds to pursue their courageous attempts to regain their island's freedom. But Cuba is not an island unto itself. This is not the first time in either ancient or recent history that a small band of freedom fighters has engaged the armor of totalitarianism. It is not the first time that communist tanks have rolled over gallant men and women fighting to redeem the independence of their homeland. Nor is it by any means the final episode in the eternal struggle of liberty against tyranny anywhere on the face of the globe, including Cuba itself. Mr. Castro has said that these were mercenaries. According to press reports, the final message to be relayed from the refugee forces on the beach came from the rebel commander. When asked if he wished to be evacuated, his answer was, "I will never leave this country." That is not the reply of a mercenary. He has gone now to join in the mountains countless other guerrilla fighters who are equally determined that the dedication of those who gave their lives shall not be forgotten, and that Cuba must not be abandoned to the communists. The Cuban people have not yet spoken their final piece, and I have no doubt that they and the Revolutionary Council, led by Dr. Cardona, members of the families of the Revolutionary Council, I am informed by the doctor yesterday, are involved themselves in the islands, will continue to speak up for a free and independent Cuba. Meanwhile, we will not accept Mr. Castro's attempts to blame this nation for the hatred which his one-time supporters now regard his repression. But there are, from this sobering episode, useful lessons for us all to learn. It is clear that the forces of communism are not to be underestimated in Cuba or anywhere else in the world. But a nation of Cuba's size is less a threat to our survival than it is a base for subverting the survival of other free nations throughout the hemisphere, as in Cuba, into a reign of terror. In the streets of free nations, over the efforts of a small group of young Cubans to regain their freedom, should recall the long roll call of refugees who cannot now go back.
Folks, he put out a dire warning. Something wasn't right about Bay of Pigs. He had reason to believe. In the next video about the Bush Mafia, I'm going to talk to you about this speech and part of what he was saying as a warning about what was coming ahead. He knew something wasn't right about Vietnam and other things. Now we're going to put it together. Please share.